Welcome back to Female Voices. Today's conversation is one that some women will see themselves in. There's no doubt about that. And I am joined by Alison Tindall, a board certified nurse coach and the founder of Thriving Willow Coaching. Alison brings 19 years experience to nursing, walking alongside patients in some of the life's most vulnerable moments. What makes her work so powerful, though, is that her understanding doesn't just come from training, it comes from lived experience. Allison's story includes pregnancy loss, which everyone that listens to the podcast know is dear to my heart, infertility, and the loss of career identity. She once held an executive level. Alongside that, she has navigated her own health journey, and we know those are all connected together many times. One that leads to the life-changing decision to ultimately gain, or release, I'm going to say release, over 160 pounds. I don't like to say lose, because when we lose something, we want to find it again. So she's released 160 pounds. What we will talk about today in this episode goes far beyond the weight or physical change. This is a conversation about identity, about grief that doesn't always get named, and what happens when life doesn't go the way we plan, which is like always, and how you begin to rebuild. Not just your body, but your relationship with yourself. So Alison now helps women bridge the gap between knowing what to do and actually living it out in their real everyday lives. So I'm so grateful for this conversation, Alison. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we met. It's not been that long ago. I mean, I feel like I've known you a really, really long time, but maybe 6 months ago, 8 months ago,
Yeah,
9
like
months
maybe
ago,
in the
less than a
fall.
year. But really have connected with you and feel like I've known you for a very, very long time, but it's been a short time. So as we get started with today's conversation, when you look back, just overview here at your journey, what feels like the moment where everything began to shift for you?
I think kind of the moment that sticks out most for me was I had some fertility issues and then a pregnancy loss. And then when my second child was about 6 months old, we were playing on the floor and I had a hard time getting up. And it was because of being pretty overweight and really out of shape and just not where I needed to be. And at that moment, there were a lot of things that kind of hit for me. I'm a little older in my journey of motherhood. I started with my first pregnancy at 34, and then I had my second baby at 38. So I know that I want to really be here for them and be well for them for a really long time. And when I couldn't get off of the floor easily, when I was playing with them, I said, something's really got to change. I want to be the active mom. I want to be the mom that's involved. I want to be here for them. And what I originally thought was, oh, I just need to lose weight, transformed into this entire overhaul of my lifestyle, my mindset, a lot of kind of unpacked things throughout my life that we all carry with us. And so that was really the turning point for me. It was kind of a physical limitation that I was just not ready to accept, but then transformed into a lot more things that I've done a lot of work around over the last 3 years.
So, question I have for that is, just because my daughter they went on that infertility journey and that pregnancy loss, and then you mentioned weight gain. Was that connected at all? Because I do know with my daughter, it seemed like all of the infertility drugs and all that hormones and all of that, I feel like attributed to some of her weight. Was that part of it, or did that not play a part of it at all?
I
In
think it
your
did.
opinion? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it did, certainly. So I also have PCOS, which is insulin resistance, can
Mhm.
contribute to weight gain and infertility
Yeah.
issues. So that was the kind of the core of some of my things. But kind of just step back even from that. My first pregnancy, I had a lot of complications. I was overweight, but
Okay.
not as greatly overweight as I was after postpartum for that first kiddo. Kind of from a grief process perspective, he was born at 30 weeks gestation.
Oh,
And
goodness.
so there was a fair amount of, trauma and things related to that. And I
Mm,
had a really hard time with postpartum depression, and in retrospect, did not manage it the right way. Didn't have a
gotcha.
lot of great support from my providers, didn't really have the I guess, the vision and kind of the insight to do something about it. And so that really contributed to some weight gain in between. With the postpartum depression, I was really
Mm,
inactive, just kind of trying to get through the day. Had some medical complications that we were managing. I had a really high demand job and had to go back at 12 weeks postpartum. I was
mm,
not have that job. And at that time, a lot of my identity was really rolled into my role as a
yeah.
executive at a hospital, actually. And so I think there was a combination of things, the postpartum depression, the loss of my pregnancy journey that I anticipated. So, like, for example, he was
Yeah.
born so early, I hadn't had my baby shower yet. And
Yeah.
so a lot of those things that the process, I didn't get to go to birthing classes because he was born so early. Like, a lot of those things were kind of lost along the way. So as I was kind of transitioning out of that, wasn't taking care of myself. And then
Sure.
kind of after we recovered from that trauma, we knew we wanted to have more children. And so we started trying. We're unsuccessful. I think PCOS again had a lot to do with that. From a mental health perspective, I think that was a big piece of it too, is there was just kind of a mental block there that my body knew that I hadn't managed and dealt with a lot of things. And I
Mm,
think that was almost a protective mechanism in a way that I knew I
yes.
wasn't ready for pregnancy. Kind of. As I'm going through this journey, I have discovered how intuitive our body is to the environment and our circumstances and things, which is not anything I was in tune to. I'm kind of going back to that. So then we did start some fertility treatments at about almost 2 years after I had my first child. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I was taking the medications. My moods were all over the place. I was having depression again. I'm sure my PCOS was flaring. I was having, high levels of progesterone, which really made my moods fluctuate a lot.
Yeah.
And then, so my coping mechanism, and I'm learning more about this now too, was always food. And so for me, with having that combination of the medications altering my hormones and anatomy and those things, I was also falling back on some of my habits of
Sure.
utilizing food for stress management and as my crutch. So I think that all really contributed to that. So, and then
Yeah.
we had a loss in 2020 of a pregnancy that we had really, really worked hard for. And
Mhm.
so didn't respond well to that. Again, wasn't really managing it the way that I should have, didn't deal with the grief of that. And kind of gave up hope that we were gonna be able to have any more children.
Mhm.
So, continued working with my OBGYN on some fertility things, and then, got pregnant in late 2021, and then
Mhm.
we had our second baby at that. And his pregnancy, we were fine. He did well, and
Oh,
he's
good.
a thriving 3-year-old now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and just wrapped up into all of that, one of the things that you said is not taking care of yourself and
Mhm,
going back to old habits. And I just wanted to kind of point that out because for the listeners, it's very common.
mm,
It's very common to, especially when you have a little one, to not take care of ourselves as women. And we know how important that is to do that. But we all fall into that. We all fall into those things from the past that are programmed in us that gave us comfort before and helped us in the past. And we've been together at a training where you have also talked about, and we've talked about just like menopause and premenopause. And we won't talk about all of that today, but that's all part of it. What worked for us in our 20s or in our teens and our 30s does not work with for us
mhm,
to the best of what we need in our 40s, 50s, 60s. It just doesn't. And we think it is, but because it has in the past. And that's with all things. That's with handling how we process grief, to our health, to really all things. Like even our children, because now they've grown. We can't do the same thing with them
mhm,
as when they were young as when now they're teenagers or adults. So we as a society need to make sure that we're always shifting things easier, but we're programmed as a species, we're kind of programmed to just keep doing the same things kind of over and over. And I guess you're finding that as you are new to what you're doing as far as your coaching business.
Yeah,
Are you finding
absolutely.
that a lot with women as you're working with them?
I am. I actually met with someone last evening. She
Mhm,
is in her late 30s, has 3 small children, and
mhm.
she's on kind of a health journey. She, hit kind of a wall and said, "Absolutely, I need to change things." She had a diagnosis of prediabetes with her last set of labs from her doctor, and she was really like, I need to handle this, and I need to do something." And so we were talking a lot about that last night, and she said, "I just have this guilt around doing something for myself." And I think
Mm,
so many of us feel that way because of
yeah,
our social programming, or because of the responsibilities of being the mom, the caregiver, the wife, the worker, the everything to everybody, the Cub Scout leader, the soccer coach, whatever it is that you're involved in because you feel like you want to be involved and do the things.
mm,
But then you easily lose track of caring for yourself. So we kind of
yeah,
had a deep dive conversation about, well, what does it mean long term if you continue to not take care of yourself?
yeah,
How do you think you're going to be able to show up for your family? And how do you think you're going to
mhm,
be able to show up as a wife and an employee and all those things that you want to be? You
mhm,
can't do that, and you can't pour from an empty cup, right? That's what kind of the verbiage is, but that's
yeah,
absolutely true. And,
yeah,
for her, we had kind of a shift in saying, well, if it's not enough to say just do it for yourself, which for some of us it's not. Like,
it's that,
say
yeah,
you're doing it for your family. You have to care
mhm,
for yourself, so you have the capacity, the bandwidth, the depth to care for the things that are important to you. And
yeah,
so I think that as moms and wives and everything else, that if we can really get from a perspective of I'm doing this in order to care better for others. If you have to talk yourself into it that way, that's great. It is enough for you to just do it to yourself, for yourself. But
yeah,
if you struggle with that, I think that's a great perspective to have. And I think as time goes on, at least for me, that has shifted. So now I have the less mom guilt. I know that if I can go get exercise, move my body, and eat well, that I show up as a much better mom, especially a much
mm,
better mom. I've got patience
yeah,
for my kids. I'm able to engage in things that they want to do. I can play Legos with them for 15 minutes. That is like the highlight of their day. Versus if I'm not caring for myself, I'm not resting well, I don't have the capacity to do that. So I
yeah.
think that it takes that shift in knowing that it's not selfish, but it serves a greater purpose.
And it's interesting, even as I introduced you, like, it's not just the training that you've experienced, it's your lived experience. You
Hmm.
talked about that, not being able to get off of the floor. Really, it sounds like that. And you talked about that. That was a big shift in your mindset and what was going on, that you needed to take care of yourself to be able to take care of them. And so that lived experience, and now you're sharing and helping others to see that. And you're right. We don't want to take care of ourselves. So, but that little reframe that you did to taking care of them if that's what you need, but you thought you had to take care of yourself to take care of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
just being reiterating that with people is super important.
Yeah,
We always have a long task list to do, and it'll always be there.
it
So
will.
yeah. So as you started this journey and really rebuilding your identity, because we talked about we kind of lost a little identity, like who am I? When you look at that, and I'm going to say sometimes it's kind of messy in the middle as you're going through that. What really was pivotal for you um, to transform where you were and the identity piece of that, not the physical, the identity piece of that?
So 2020 was a rough year for everybody, right? And
Yes,
I was an executive at
nursing.
a hospital, and my role was eliminated that year. And so I mentioned before that I had tied a lot of my identity to my title and the
Mhm.
badge of I'm the busy badge, right? Like I worked tons of hours, really gave everything my all, put it all in there, neglected my family, quite honestly. And I hate to admit that and say that, but I wasn't showing up as the mom and the wife that I knew I wanted and needed to be. So that was an experience, kind of more of a retrospective experience. At the time, it just felt like a big loss. And I had to kind of pivot and figure out, like, without that executive title, without that job, who am I? Well, I could say, well, I'm a mom and I'm a wife and I'm this and I'm that, but it didn't feel like that was enough. A lot of us have that like not enough
Right.
feeling. And so that was kind of my first experience with that. And so over the last, I guess, almost 5 years now, I have kind of pivoted from different roles and different jobs as a nurse, still working in nursing. I kind of found myself back in a director role in an agency. And then again, kind of had the experience of I didn't lose my job, but they pivoted my role and my I guess my financial piece of it, like my salary and my bonus structure in a way that was out of my control after I had built something
Mm,
again. So, my
okay.
executive role, I had really built a program that I was really engaged in, and then that was kind of stripped away. And then here again, I had spent 4 years really rebuilding my career and my status and my things that I wanted to, and then it was stripped away again. And so, kind of with having those two really pivotal experiences of like, I cannot tie my worth and my things to an external source like that. And
Yeah.
I think over this last year, that has been what's been so meaningful and impactful to me. Weight loss started a few years ago. That's been important. And I think that helped me gain some of the confidence and the momentum and things I needed to make some of these other shifts. But knowing now that my worth is not tied to my title or my salary or those things has been almost like a release of all this pressure
Mm,
and this heavy load that I've been carrying because it's been so dependent on other people. And now
yeah.
that I've shifted into, well, my meaning is my worthiness is how I show up for my family and how I care for other people and how I serve other people. And that was also something I'd kind of lost in my roles as an executive and director and in those kind of higher level roles. I didn't have the opportunity to serve in the way that I intended and that was
Mm,
aligned. And that's why it felt so, I've always felt uncomfortable, like unsettled. Like I would hit this metric, I would hit this mark, I would hit this dollar amount, but it never felt good. And it was
mm,
because I was misaligned with my meaning and what I really should be doing. So I think the changes came slowly for me. I was a slow learner on this. Took me 5 years and two experiences, but we're here. So that's what
yeah.
counts, right? Forgiveness and giving yourself some grace is a really important piece of all of this,
Yeah.
but really letting go of that external rat reason for my worth. And that is a work in progress. Like every day, I still have to remind myself it doesn't matter the balance of my checking account. It doesn't matter the titles that I carry behind my name. What matters is, am I showing up for my family, my husband, and my clients that I'm serving? And that has been really pivotal in feeling more aligned. And
Good.
like I can go to sleep at night now knowing that I've tried my best to make an impact. And it's what
Mhm.
counts and it matters to me now. Like, was I serving people in a way as a nurse executive? Sure. Maybe. I mean,
Mhm.
in a roundabout way, I was trying, but this feels much more aligned. So I think kind of the moral of that story is kind of taking those experiences as a lived experience. You don't win or lose, you win or learn, and taking those and pivoting and finding what's in alignment for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because then when you find the alignment, the other things get easier, right? When you're
Yeah.
out of alignment, you're kind of going against the grain or uphill. And then when you get in alignment with something that feels good, in your core that's what it happens, other things become easier. You have less resistance. The
Yeah.
conversations become easier. And taking care of yourself becomes easier because you're not exhausted both mentally and physically from going against what you should be doing. And so I think
Mhm.
those are all really important components in the alignment part of it and kind of figuring out what that is, which is hard and it may change. Like this season is what aligns for me now, but 6
Mhm.
months, a year, 2 years from now, it might not be. But then,
Yeah.
as you learn these experiences and you have these pivotal points of losing jobs or losing different things, you take those and then you learn to pivot. I think the key to life is being flexible and being able to pivot. I
Yeah.
think that's what creates a successful life and something that you can find joy out of. But again, it's a lot of work, but pick your
Yeah.
heart, right? Like
Yeah.
pick your heart of doing the work or pick your heart of living in a place that's out of alignment.
And I wanted to just go back to what you said, like, if you call, I think you said a slow learner, like you experienced, the loss of one job and then went into and lost another job and all of that and trying to find who you were in all of that. And I'll go back to the beginning, like we're as species, as humans, want to try to keep going back to what we knew that worked. And as you said, we need to continue to grow as people and not always want to go back to what we've experienced that might have worked. And many times, what I work with people is really going back even further, past careers to childhood to see where things kind of got instilled and programmed, and that at the time they were very beneficial for us, but not now. And so I just wanted to kind of reiterate that you said about being a slow learner. No, nope, you're just programmed. We just do that until we decide, okay, that's not working anymore. Let's do a big shift. Let's find that alignment. So if a woman is listening who feels kind of like you, disconnected from themselves, whether it's physical, whether it's identity, whether it's family, whatever it is, where does that reconnection, I'm going to say, begin?
So I think the really important piece of it is to keep it simple and low pressure. We've got a lot going on already, and if you add an extra pressure in this big formal project of how am I going to reinvent my life, it's probably not going to work or work at the pace that is serves you.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember one thing that I started doing is I put a note in my phone and I said, throughout the day, I'm going to red light, green light, yellow light, some of the things that I do. If it's a red light thing, it's something that doesn't bring me joy, doesn't make me very comfortable. I dread doing it. And then I'm also going to add the green light things. Like what brought me joy? What did I sit down and do that I lost track of time? And then the yellow ones are like my obligations. I don't mind doing them. I know they need to get done. Probably not something I can negotiate out of, but what does that look like? And that
Mm-hmm.
really helped me kind of try to start seeing how I wanted to spend my time. Because I was spending my time doing things that didn't really have a return on investment, I guess you could say. Like they didn't have a return on my satisfaction, my job satisfaction,
Mm-hmm.
or making me feel better throughout the day. So I started kind of tracking what that looked like and then just started looking for patterns. Like I found in my role that I did not like doing the sales part of my job, but I loved interacting with patients. I felt energized after talking to patients. I felt like I was, that was
Mm.
where I needed to be. So to me, I was like, oh, that's a flag. Like that's what I need to do more of in my day. So
Yeah,
then I started pivoting to say, okay, how can I adjust my daily work to where I get to spend more time with patients? So then I started visiting the hospitals more because I knew those patients were captive audiences and I could spend as much time in there as I wanted. And they welcomed it. They were like, yeah, talk to me all day long.
yeah,
And so I think that's a really simple way to kind of start.
I love it.
Yeah. And then, as you kind of progress and you figure those things out, I think having a mentor or a coach is a really great idea just to kind of have some space. And that's the other thing too, is like we get so caught up that we don't take that time to really dedicate to what kind of work am I going to do this week for myself? Like, can I pencil in 15 minutes a day to say, write down a journal entry or write down my red light, green light list or those different things. And then what kind of a mentor or a coach or just even a colleague or a, acquaintance that you can check in with
Uh-huh.
really is great. I'm a really externally accountable person. And so when I have that time to speak to somebody, it holds me accountable to taking the time to do it because I need to
Love
have
that.
my assignment ready for the next time we meet. But it also gives you someone else's perspective that is in your corner. It's not somebody that has an agenda or, something else like that. They really have your best interest in mind, which you need to find that. And we need those people in our lives anyway. But I think taking that kind of step back and saying what fills me up, what gives me a green light and energy, what drains my energy, and how can I tweak my day to do more green than red.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was power packed. Lots of stuff that you said there. I love that. I'm going to do this, going into my calendar and putting green lights, yellow, and red lights because, yeah, I resonated with that a lot. Like, there are a lot of things that I do that I just feel like obligated I have to do, but really in tune to what I will say, what came to mind was what brings me joy? What
Uh-huh.
fills my cup? You talked about that earlier, like filling our cups, like what fills my cup? And just being very aware of that. I'm a gratitude person, so it would be easy to do that. Like, what filled my cup today that I'm so grateful for that happened? And just being very, very aware of that and in tune to that. And you talked a lot about just that accountability, that coaching and different people. I glanced up at my whiteboard because on my whiteboard in front of me they talk about surrounding yourself with 5 people. Um, I have kind of a little more twist on that. Like you will grow to be connected to those 5 people and whatever their worth is as far as dollar amount, surround yourself with people where you want to be. But the other piece of that is surround yourself with people that will support and help you. So one is a cheerleader. someone that's just there, always loving on you, supporting you, help you. One is a mentor, so that can give you direction. One is a coach that can really keep you accountable. A peer, someone that is in the same industry as you, that you can really, they can help you with pitfalls or ways to utilize things that they have done. And the other is just a friend. And I love having to be aware all the time of who are my 5 people that I can surround myself around, that are going to be my cheerleaders, that are going to be those people like Teresa. No, 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 no. That's not the best. Let's not do that. And help you avoid those, what I will call minefields, walking with someone else or behind someone else. So to have those and that accountability, that coach is huge. And I think people are learning that more and more. We've experienced that in many ways, like especially with our physical health, as far as trainers, working out or whatever, to have that accountability to get to the gym. And I think we're learning more and more that we need that in every area of for our health, for our spirituality, for all things, our career, all things. We need those coaches and those accountability people that really can help us move just in a better direction, that we're not always going backwards, that we're more so always moving forward. I mean, we're going to go backwards, but to have those more forward motion than backwards. First. So in your experience, how connected are, and I know the answer to this, but I want to hear your answers, and I want the audience to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
How connected is your physical body to the emotional weight we carry, especially grief, stress, identity loss?
Yeah. I would say they're almost one and the same. I mean, you can't have one without the other. And that's a premise of what the work that I do a lot is, that I think a lot of people come to me for weight loss because that's what externally, that's what it looks like I've done. And they're like, tell me your secrets, tell me what you've done. Well, it's not that simple, right? You have to do all the things. And so, for example, when I meet with a new client, we do a wheel of life assessment. And so what that looks like, it looks at every facet of your life. It looks at your family dynamics. It looks like at your social relationships. It looks at your work life. It looks at your hobbies and your spirituality and all those things. So you can't have physical health without having good, or at least emotional and mental health that you're working to improve. You can get so far by cutting calories and doing workouts and things, but there's a place where that just isn't enough anymore. And I think that's something that I've really learned after I had my rapid weight loss, is that, okay, well, I hit this number now, but I still don't feel great. Why is that? And that's when I really had to dig in and start doing some of the work. I started seeing a therapist late last year. I got my own coaches. I've got a business coach, and then working on getting more of a kind of a business and personal coach kind of combo. But I think it's really important to know that you can't just do work in one area and expect everything to work out. I think that's, for me, it's kind of, I've been this type A personality, executive, like checklist, get one thing done, move on to the next. And that's a hard shift for me too, especially with all the expectations around having a lifestyle like that or a personality like that. High achiever, you're expected to get all the things done. Taking the time to step back and say, check in with yourself. I know that I am not okay today. What do I need to do aside from the physical pieces, eating well? What do I need to check in with myself mentally? Do I need to reach out to one of my 5 people and say, hey, I'm struggling today. I need 10 minutes of your time. You got a minute? Everybody says, yes, I have a minute, of course. If they're in your circle, they'll do that for you. But I think, you spot on. Like they're one and the same. Like they're all one big package, and we have to address all the things. And for a lot of people, that's a hard concept. Is like, no, I just need to lose weight. Well, that's not going to happen if you don't address the other things. And so I like the word that you use with like releasing, because you're releasing weight, but it's physical weight on the scale, sure, but you're also releasing some of the childhood trauma. Or for me, I had a binge eating disorder that I never really addressed the right way. And that's why I had the weight problem that I had. And then those pieces of grief and loss along the way really exacerbated that. And when I didn't get to the core of that problem, nothing was solved. And until I really started addressing that in therapy and the physical pieces that kind of went into that and changing my behaviors, that's when it started getting better. And that's when I was better able to start aligning the other parts of my life. Like my relationship with my husband is better because I have the tolerance and the capacity to have good conversations. Of course, I've mentioned my relationship with my kids is better. And I really think too, like you get to a point where we've always said it's okay to not be okay. But then you have to kind of do a shift too when you've been in this fight or flight survival mode, that it's also okay to be okay. And it's okay to
Mhm,
be okay where you are. And
mhm,
while you said this is not a one stop, this fixes it, it's a work in progress. And
mhm,
because life happens, circumstances change, you have unfortunate things with, job loss or loss of family members or close friends
mhm,
or all of those losses. You have to put a structure and a foundation in to say, I have these losses, let's deal with them, but I'm not losing the other parts. And then that's the challenge, right? It's always it's a daily, if not almost hourly sometimes, work that you do, and keeping those things in perspective and keeping what's important at the forefront. And again, the alignment of those things. Because if you can go back
mhm.
to your why and to your alignment, it makes it easier to get back into that place of this is my purpose, this is what serves, this is what I need to do.
And sometimes it's just those 5 people helping you, like, "Okay, you shared with me, these things, and I don't see that happening. Let's do a revisit, a refocus, a realignment." To get back to that. And yeah, spot on that. Yeah, you can go and work on releasing the weight, and it's not going to fix everything, and you're just going to gain that back, or you're going to have to work harder at keeping it off. And what we know, especially as we get older, like in our 60s, like I am, that working out hard like that is not beneficial for my body, and so you can't sustain that forever. So a big piece of that is working on all the emotional components and every spirituality, all the things that, like you talked about, that more holistic um, coaching, a more holistic lifestyle, so that you can do that in an easier, better way to sustain it. So
Yeah.
one of the things I see so often, and I know you do too, is women, they understand their pain. They understand that they're hurting and they can talk about it and they're aware of it, but they still feel stuck. Why do you think that this happens? Is it directly what we just talked about, or do you see anything else
I
that
think it's
you?
a combination of
Okay.
things. And unfortunately, none of this is simple, right?
Yeah, no.
And I think to that point, I think breaking things down into smaller, more attainable goals or things that you can do kind of little bits at a time is kind of the key. So when I work with
Mhm.
clients, I usually do kind of a 12-week session and we add on if we need to at the end. But, you can't fix these things that you've been dealing with for 30, 40, 50 years overnight.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? And we need time and the grace to give yourself time and the patience to give yourself the time to work through those things. And that does not happen quickly. And I really think a key component of that is kind of prioritizing maybe the bigger rocks and chipping away at those at a time. And then you'll see that some of the other things get easier to manage along that way. But I think
Mhm.
that's the barrier for a lot of people is they get overwhelmed. There's so much information coming at us all of the time.
Mhm.
I was just thinking about that yesterday. I was trying to learn a little bit more about gut health and how that really impacts, our mental well-being and everything. Like
Yeah.
sidebar, so 90% of our serotonin is created in our gut, and that's your feel-good hormone. If your gut's out of whack, there's this huge wealth of information that we have access to, which is
Mhm.
wonderful, right? Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, couldn't Google search something or chat GPT something that could change your life and your trajectory. But
Mhm.
also, it's how do you filter through that information? And
Mhm.
how do you customize it to what you can utilize? I think staying really focused on some of the core things to fix first and then building on that is the way to do that, because I think overwhelm is a block for a lot of people. You
Yeah,
get to a point where you're
for
like, too much
sure.
information, things I can't deal with this right now. I've got too much going on.
Mhm.
But if you
Mhm.
say, hey, from just like a health lens perspective, hey, I'm going to just like drink more water today. That's great. That's something everybody can do, right? Just have a glass of water
Mhm.
with you all the time and just sip on it all day long. Like manageable, tangible little breakdowns of things. And that's something too, like, if you're working through grief and today I feel overwhelmed, I can't do a lot, but maybe I can just write a sentence or even say something out loud that releases a little bit of that. And if that's all I can do
Mhm.
today, you know what? That's okay. I'll work
Yeah.
harder tomorrow. What your full life and your 100% is what you have capacity to give at that time. And I
Yeah.
think that women especially have a really hard time saying that's just enough, right? We never feel like it's just enough. Well, I should have done more. I should have been able to do this. I should be able to solve this on
Mhm.
my own. Well, I'm weak because I can't do this and XYZ and take care of all the things. That's not what it is. We weren't made to deal with all of these things all of the time in this way.
Yeah.
We've got great tools, we've got great support systems that we can put in place. But again, it's kind of like resetting, saying this is what I can do for now and that's okay. That's enough. And trying to stay away from the overwhelm of it because you can't be productive if you're stuck in this spinning of overwhelm. I don't know where to start. So start.
Yeah. So on my journey through all of the things that I've been through and women that I work with, we just talked about being aware of our pain and talking about it and naming it and understanding it and even functioning really well in our lives, even coaching around it. But many times our body still holds it. And there is space where where women are doing all the right things and they're still feeling stuck, heavy, disconnected, all of the things. And it's not because they're doing anything wrong. It's because the release hasn't happened yet. And I know we both do and have had the opportunity to experience 9D breath work. And we are finding that that is super powerful to allow those releases to happen without needing to find the perfect words. And so we facilitate that here in the Illinois area, Metro East area. So how would you describe 3D or 9D, I don't know why I keep saying 9D breathwork sessions are different than the traditional breath work or coaching or therapy for someone really who has never experienced it? How would you describe the breath work?
Yeah, so I think that, breath work is traditionally thought of as something you do while you're doing yoga or
Mhm.
like a specific kind of like seated meditation. This, I feel the best way to describe it, it's kind of an immersive experience. And
Mhm.
so just to kind of give you a visual of what it looks like, we have our participants sit in a zero gravity chair and they have a sleep mask on and then they have noise canceling headphones and then also, blankets and stuff to be comfortable. And as you're going through this experience journey, we like to call it a journey, you have the opportunity, you're listening to a guided meditation, but along with the meditation, there's focused music, there's focused sounds, there's focused other, verbiage and things that are going on in the background to really help you center and have the space. I think I really like to think of it as like a safe, comfortable space to
Mhm.
let those things go. So you don't have to do the work of, like Teresa mentioned, verbalizing what I'm feeling. You just feel it. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to use that energy about it. It's just what you're feeling. And then as you're going through these guided journeys, they're helping support that. So a lot of people with meditation, and myself included, it's kind of like, well, I don't really know what to think about when I'm meditating, right? And so this takes that work away and really helps focus on different things. And while it's interesting because you'll have a large group of people that are all listening to the same meditation or the main focus and journey, but they get completely different things out of it. And
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
interesting because it has so much to do with your experiences and your traumas and your triumphs and whatever. But what it really does is it takes that pressure out of having to have the conversation or feeling like you have to say the right thing, right? Like, I think that's a kind of a barrier for people sometimes is you're not comfortable sharing maybe some really, personal thing. And here you don't have to
Mhm.
talk about it. You're thinking about it and you're processing it in a way that's personal and private. And that gives people a lot of comfort. And I think that's one reason it's so powerful is that there's no expectation around it. You feel what you feel, you process what you process.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, there's people like Teresa and I like facilitating that conversation afterward. Like if there's more that you need, then maybe now you've opened something, you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that was going on. Well, then you can say, hey, I've recognized this. I need some support here. And then facilitators and coaches and things can then help you with that. So it's an
Yeah.
entirely different level than what you think of the traditional breath work with yoga and your body, which I think is super important for your physical
Oh, yeah.
perspective. But this is very much like a brain workout and an emotional, and like your emotional workout. And I think that that's why it's so different and so powerful. And it speaks to more people because I think it taps into, like, it's called 9D for a reason because it's like 9 dimensions, right? It taps into those
Mhm.
different dimensions of your psyche and your subconscious in different things. Yeah. But in a safe way. It's not like you're
Yeah.
being, like some people have concerns about hypnosis and things like that. It's not the same. This is a really private way to kind of unpack some of those things and process them and then reach out for the support on the back end when you've realized kind of what's come to the surface.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I will add to that is like we're talking about our nervous systems, and it is really a amazing nervous system kind of reset. And it's quick, it's safe, and it will, like Allison said, it really kind of gets sometimes to the core of releasing some grief, some trauma, some emotional weight that many times is why the actual weight isn't being released because we're holding it and we're protecting from it. And it really does go into that. I love that you said, like, don't know what to think. Well, we are overthinkers, so it helps with that because it goes straight really to your subconscious mind and allows that other type of thinking, that subconscious thinking, to surface so that those releases and those awarenesses come to be. And so it's just, I don't know, it's one of the most powerful things, that tools that I have been exposed to and have learned and now I'm trained in to really support other people with. Like all of my grief clients now, I make sure that they have the opportunity to be part of this type of breath work to really support and help them. So is there anything that you would like to share that I did not specifically ask you a question about that you think is super important for the audience to know on their healing journey, whatever that healing journey looks
So I can't abandon my 20 years of nursing experience. So as much as I kind of want to some days, but from a really basic, like physiological and biological perspective, to your
like?
point
Mhm.
earlier about releasing those things, your body uses, your stores of fat and glucose and calories and things as a defense mechanism. So, our bodies were created for a fight or flight kind of thing back,
Mhm.
whatever, like back
The
when we
Stone
had
Age.
really, yeah, Stone Age is like prehistoric saber-tooth tiger situations, right? And so our body really kind of from a biological perspective doesn't know if we're
Mhm.
running from a saber-tooth tiger or we're grieving a loss, or our body kind of goes into the same system of
Yeah.
protective mode. And it's great for all those reasons. That's how our immune system works. That's how our
Mhm.
safety works. That's how those things work. But until you get to kind of the core of working through those things and releasing that fight or flight mode or survival mode, you can't get to a healthy space, healthy weight,
Yeah.
a heart health, brain health, all of gut health, all of those things are
Mhm.
really stagnant in the cases where you're still in survival mode. And I
Mhm.
think for different reasons, expectations, personality traits, different mental health issues like ADHD, anxiety, depression, and all those things. Grief is huge because you go into like your body is in this like really physical block of, I just have to survive this. How do I get through this? And that's why this work is so, so important to do in conjunction with health journeys. Like it is part of the health. Like I mentioned before, they're one and the
Mhm.
same. Like you can't do one without the other. So I think for those that really think of things in more of a like metrics, biological, I need data kind of thing, there is data to support this. Your body is a machine. And unless all those components are working well, it doesn't work. You can't have a
Mhm.
running engine without gas and spark plugs, right? If you need a car
Mhm.
analogy, you really got to have all those components to work to move forward and live the life that you want. For a long time, I was in
Yeah.
survival mode. Again, why I was holding on to 160, probably even more pounds of excess weight.
Mhm.
Like that's a whole person. I weigh less than that now. That is a whole person. But I was holding on to so much of that because it was a protective mechanism for me. And I know that now. Like food was protective for me. Like that was my emotional stability. I didn't address the true things. And I know there's childhood trauma and all those things that all of us carry. I had a great childhood. Like my parents were there, we had what we needed, but there are all these other pieces and components that we go through. I guess just to kind of end, I would say that it's really important to do the work in all the pieces and find the right support. That's huge. I
Yes.
loved your conversation about the 5 people in your circle. I never thought of it about kind of like their exact roles. I always thought about it like, oh, 5 cool people, but I love how they bring different things into your life and having a focus on those. And shoot, bring 10 or 15 if you can. Like the more the merrier in that sense, I think. Like and that's one thing that transitioning into my new role, I have met the best people. And
Mhm.
I just it's incredible how siloed my world was because I was so like nose to the grindstone. I'm doing XYZ. I got a P&L sheet I got to do. I got people to hire, people to fire, all those things. And like, oh my gosh, like that is not what life's about. And I'm finally starting to pivot to where that's what's in alignment for me. Again, the alignment thing. So
That's awesome. I love that. So real quick, and we will put it, of course, as always, show notes, all that. How can people reach you? How can they find you if they would like to talk more about what you've got going on? And also, they can always reach out to you as well as far as the breath work because we're doing that together. But where do they find you?
I have
What?
different socials. I have a website. It's thrivingwillowcoaching.com. You can book appointments through there. I always do just a 1 hour kind of initial conversation discovery call to see if I'm a good fit or what I can help you with. I
Yeah,
think that's a really important, am I the right fit for you? Are you the right fit for what I can help? So that's available always. I'm on Instagram, Thriving Willow Coaching, and then on Facebook, Thriving Willow Coaching. And then yep, do breathwork classes of the second and fourth Tuesday of every month in person in Maryville. But for my coaching, I can coach anywhere. I do virtual coaching. I'm not regulated by different states or anything because I'm working as a coach, not as a nurse. And so happy to do any of those things. I have a couple people out of state that I work with, and that's
that's
a really wonderful opportunity. And then from a physical lens, I do some personal training and small group women's classes. My kind of niche right now is working with perimenopausal and menopausal women and really finding good fits for their nutrition and activity level because it changes and it's different. And
awesome.
then I'm working towards some other things with gut health and that sort of thing because of that connection with emotions and gut health and brain health and all those things.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
awesome,
just reach out.
awesome.
I'm flexible. I'm
Yeah.
happy to meet, and I would love that.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, like I said, all of those that information will be in the show notes, or they can reach out to me. I can connect you to Allison because we're working closely together. We love supporting each other and all of the clients that we have within the community and abroad. So, this conversation, gosh, so powerful, reminding the listeners that healing isn't just something we think through. It's something we have to allow ourselves to feel, process, and release. So your story speaks to so many. I know so many women that are carrying quietly all the things that kind of we share today. The grief of what didn't happen, the loss of
Mhm.
identity, the pressure to keep showing up, as you spoke about over and over, the courage it takes to choose yourself in the middle of all that is super important, is what I received from this episode. And what I love about what we're talking about today is that it doesn't stop at awareness. Opens the door, but what actually is possible when you begin to release what you've been holding in your body through support, through coaching, through experiences like the breathwork session we now offer. So if something in this conversation resonated with you, if you're not recognizing that you've been holding more than you realize, just know you do not have to carry it alone. There is space for you to process, to release, and reconnect with yourself one small aligned step at a time. So thank you so much, Allison, for your heart, your honesty, and the work that you're doing in the world. I so appreciate you. And to those listeners, we're so honored to walk alongside you in your journey. So we'll see you next time again on Female Voices Life and Loss. And this is Teresa.
Thank you so much for having me.